Hi, I'm Scarlett Ravenswood, and welcome to my channel. If you're new here, I post weekly videos on tarot, paganism, and magic. And today is really exciting because I am here with Austin Shippey, who is a fellow YouTuber in the growing witchcraft community. And this will be my first interview through YouTube. So Austin, thanks so much for taking the time, and I'm really looking forward to speaking with you.
And thank you for inviting me on. It's an honor to be the first interview that you're having on your channel.
Yeah, wonderful.
I'm really excited about this.
Excellent. So I'm really excited to start off by learning a bit more about when you first got interested in witchcraft and what drew you to this specific path.
Mm-hmm. Well, I was always interested in certain mystical topics. My mom raised me as Christian, and when I was a kid, I would tell certain people that I met, before I could even know of this concept, I would tell them that they have an angel behind them, or an angel with them. And it always followed me that I was kind of sensitive and also pretty terrified of the spiritual world. I was always paranoid about whether what I was thinking was against God, or if what I was thinking would bring demons into my life, or certain things like that. And there were many nights where I was just terrified of demons, the devil, hell, evil, all these certain sorts of things. So when I started getting older and exploring spirituality, I wanted to know the answers. I wanted to know what scared me so much as a child, and also what I was so in tune with as a child, the holy things that I felt and experienced. So for my whole childhood, basically, I spent time in the library reading books on ghosts and aliens and paranormal and hauntings and horror stories and all these different things that talk about the more mysterious sides of life and the universe. And it followed me into my teenage years, and I just kept exploring, and eventually I kind of made that jump where I said, instead of being afraid of spiritual things, I'm just going to explore them and learn about them and kind of face that fear and embrace it. And that interest that's been with me since I was a child has just grown into how I am today. So the average good Christian boy in America would have probably grown up and became a priest to learn about the mystical sides of things and really explore it. But I decided to become a priest of witchcraft, not a priest of Christianity. And it really is a priesthood. It's a religion. And it's something where, similar to any other priesthood, they're exploring the mysteries of nature and our existence. They're trying to bring themselves to an understanding of those mysteries that have always been with us, that we're always trying to explore. And my life is very enriched by it. And I can't imagine doing anything else. It's one of my highest passions. And I think I'll take it with me into the future for my entire life.
Yeah, that's so interesting too, that you kind of started out having some of those early paranormal experiences. And I had kind of a similar upbringing and started to have those experiences, which started to draw me to that path. So I find that that's often common among people that end up studying witchcraft, and that's really interesting. And it's kind of neat too. Did you was it kind of one continuous interest, or a lot of people, they become interested and then they lose interest and then they find it again as they get older? Or for you, was it kind of this, you fell in love immediately and you knew that was for you?
It was always shape-shifting, always flowing in and out, and I never really quite knew what I was aiming for. And it wasn't instant love for me, I would say, in the whole idea of magic, pre-Christian spirituality, and what people today call paganism. It wasn't an instant love, because during my high school years I decided to explore all different kinds of spirituality. So that included Buddhism, Catholicism, Hinduism, Native American spirituality, Mexican spirituality, everything that I could try to get my hands on and kind of reach into. And I eventually decided to start reading about what people call Wicca today. Mm-hmm. And I read the Llewellyn books, of course, the books that are on every library bookshelf for the most part, unless you live in a tiny little conservative town. But I was fascinated by something about it, and I liked some of the ideas, but I always felt some objection towards it. I never felt it was completely right for me. And then eventually I became very disillusioned. It became, I'm not quite sure about some of this stuff. I became very disillusioned because I realized that what these people were presenting as a religion, like the facts of a religion, like this is what this is. I realized that they, first of all, didn't have any authority. They didn't have a line going back years or even lifetimes. A lot of the time they invented it like a year ago or 5 years ago, and this is what they're presenting to the world. And I became very disillusioned and frustrated, and I was like, okay, I bought a lot of Llewellyn books. I've spent many hours reading, and I'm tired of doing this. I'm just going to go back to the very beginning and see what there is. So I looked through all the history books, and I found the books by Gerald Gardner, Janet and Stuart Farrer, Patricia Crowther, Doreen Valiente, and I decided to follow that timeline, start at the very beginning, follow that timeline. And what I found in those books written in the 50s, 60s, 70s, there was something really, really there for me. It felt very opposite of what I had been reading before, and it was honestly scary because they aren't afraid to have those shadows present, and they aren't afraid to delve into them a little bit. And I decided to explore them from there, and within a few years I just was like swept away on this path. It took me into the forest, and I got lost in it. But it's been an amazing journey. I found something there that I didn't find in anything else, this spirit.
That's so interesting, too, that you felt kind of like almost disillusioned by a lot of the stuff you were reading, because there is this kind of bigger debate, I think, in the community on, there is no good definition, for what is paganism or Wicca. So you have, some people, who say they practice Wicca, and then they're on the complete, bright sunshine and everything is rainbows and love and really
crystal
kind of
and chakras,
new agey kind of movement. And then you have, on the other spectrum, people who are really embracing the kind of dark aspect too. It's equally light and dark, and we can't fully appreciate the whole spectrum unless we go there. So there is this huge kind of tension or debate between the various factions. So, how do you define, these different terms, like paganism, Wicca, or witchcraft?
Okay. The thing about Wicca is everyone says that the British traditional craft is Wicca nowadays. That became very popular in the 80s and the 90s going on. And people have gotten swept up in it, and I haven't. And my coven hasn't, and my line hasn't, going back all the way to the beginning of the tradition, and then onwards from there. So people say Alexandrian Wicca, and I'm like, what? Alexandrian Wicca? You mean Alexandrian witchcraft? And people say Gardnerian Wicca, and I guess it's their choice to use that, because we're taught that Wicca is an old English word for witchcraft or witch. A Wicca is a witch, and it kind of goes back to where you could say witcha, like witchery, or a witcha. And we're taught that that's one of the old words that was used, but we're taught that the craft is the craft. It's witchcraft. We're witches, first and foremost. I was consecrated as a priest and a witch, not a priest and a Wiccan, and not a priest and a pagan. So that's what I am. I'm a witch. My religion is witchcraft. And a lot of people don't like that I'm saying that, but you go back to the very beginnings. A lot of people say Gerald Gardner founded Wicca. This is wrong on a few levels. First off, he never used the word Wicca to describe the religion. He used Wicca to describe an individual witch. So they taken that and they use this word and they say, well, we don't want his thing to be called witchcraft. We want to be called witchcraft. We don't want him to be in our group. So we're going to say he's Wicca posthumously after his death, where he can't weigh in on it. And you look at all of his writings, and he said witchcraft, and he said witchcraft is alive, and that I'm a witch, and the witchcraft circle, the witchcraft initiation, the gods of witchcraft, the goddess of witchcraft. So as far as I'm concerned, it's always been witchcraft. People can way later say that he founded Wicca, but really his role was he was the first person to come out and say witchcraft is still around, and here we are. That's all he did. He wasn't the founder of witchcraft. He wasn't the founder of Wicca. He just was the first person to really come out publicly and say we're still here.
Yeah, definitely. He was the one who kind of took these practices and formed a system around them, but he didn't own the practices themselves. Yeah.
And more historians are saying that he actually was in touch with witches and that they were kind of a decadent practice, that there wasn't a lot there to work with. So he kind of fleshed it out. But they also say that Gerald Gardner took these rituals and built a system. In fact, it was an entire coven of people, actually a few covens of people who had practices going back as well, who agreed to help him. And now, how it is now, we've had 60 or so years, 70 years even, of lifetimes of people going in and just innovating and moving with the spirit and dancing with the spirit of the craft. So to say that Gerald Gardner formed it and made it a thing, really it's lifetimes of people who have formed it and made it a thing. It's a living, breathing tradition and existence.
Yeah, and I think that's probably one of the things people like so much about witchcraft is that it is evolving, and and it's so different in a way from like any type of religious system that people grow up with that is so standardized and routine, and you kind of just follow along with what has already been decided for you. And I think, yeah, definitely people get drawn to this because there is that space to kind of explore and evolve something, still tap into that history, that culture and those traditions, but in turn make them your own.
Yeah. And I like to think of it, religions all have rituals. Religions are all full of rituals, but the craft is not completely a ritual. It's a dance.
Yeah, I like that. That's a good one. So you follow Alexandrian witchcraft specifically. So why did you choose Alexandrian witchcraft?
The first thing that comes to mind is the power. When I talked and spoke to Alexandrians, I knew that they had power behind them. And I looked at how they presented themselves and how their lives were and how the craft kind of formed around their life and flowed through their life. And I saw that they were people who really have power. They really are moving and living with the spirit of witchcraft. And I didn't see that so much in other places. I would see people in almost every tradition who really were doing that. But it tended to be few and far between. And when I approached the Gardnerians to learn more, almost no one was nice to me. Almost no one was accommodating. No one treated me as a seeker on a magical path. They treated me as another person who can send you an email, and then they send you a questionnaire. You print it out, fill it out, send it back to them, and they'll be like, this is okay. I guess we'll meet up for coffee. That's not magical. That's not bringing bringing someone to you and connecting to them because they're on a magical path and you're on a magical path and you're meeting and seeing what happens from there. So when I actually did talk to Alexandrians, they treated me as if I was on a magical path, and they seemed to be such powerful, magical people. And it just felt right. I got swept up in it, and I don't regret it a day since. Alexandrian witchcraft is also very unique. It's kind of an icon in its own right. If you type in Alexandrian witchcraft, you'll see those iconic photos, and it's a being. It doesn't blend in with the trees like a lot of witchcraft does. It really shines with its own type of power and its own aura. And if you're attracted to that, you're attracted to it, and you'll probably find your way there. If you're not attracted to it, it's like you'll either love it or hate it. There's usually not very many in-betweens. Alexandrian witchcraft usually draws a lot of controversy because it's so out there. It's shining so bright. And a lot of people just turn away from that and they want to go do something else. That's fine. That's their path. But I don't like a lot of the hate that gets thrown to it. A lot of these people on the internet are criticizing Alexandrian priesthood, and they say they're wrong for doing this. They should change this, or this annoys me about them. And I just think, what are you doing? Yeah. We are here doing so much. What are you doing besides complaining on the internet about a tradition that you've never even stepped foot inside of? I don't know. I'm about to get.
It is hard to like. It is hard to find kind of that community, because I've had similar difficult experiences with trying to, interact with groups, and I've met a lot of Gardnerians. I haven't really met any Alexandrians in person yet, but oftentimes I'll go to these kind of meet and greet pagan style or Wiccan style meetups, and it just doesn't really feel magical. We kind of stand around this, we push a couch back and we just stand in this carpeted room, and a lot of it's like, oh no, we can't do that because that would offend this person, and we can't do that because that would offend this, and we spend so much time trying to find something that would work for everyone that it just loses kind of all sense of power in a way. And I think a lot of people, struggle with that, or they go to a couple of these meetings, they meet some people, but it's so tough to find any sense of real power in these kind of open sessions.
And that's furthermore part of the problem with people who are actively part of these powerful traditions, who are so rigorous and developed over many lifetimes. If people say that my religion is Wicca, then they go to an outer court Wicca ritual in one of those carpeted rooms, and they pass out gluten-free cookies and burn a little tiny stick of incense and put it out because they don't want anyone to have an allergic reaction or anything. And then they go to these things and they stand around and they say a few poems and maybe do a meditation and align their chakras, and they think, oh, that's what Wicca is. I'll go elsewhere. And then they look at Alexandrian and Gardnerian Wicca and these other really developed traditions, and they say, oh, that's Wicca? I'll go to traditional witchcraft because that must be the opposite. And then they don't realize that the traditional witchcraft that they're doing is highly inspired by British traditional Gardnerian and Alexandrian. So it's very messy, and it's something that we have to reconcile with now that people have kind of taken this name. And I mean, it's sincere to them. Their practice, what they're calling Wicca, is very sincere to them. So I can't knock it for that. But what I can say is what I'm doing is different. This is what I do. It's not the same. Most of the time, it's not even remotely the same. And as long as I'm saying that, I just hope there are some people who will reevaluate the situation and see that it's not cut and dry at all. That's all I hope to do by saying that. I'm not trying to downplay the neo-Wiccans, so to speak, because they often have a really devoted spiritual practice, but it's not what I do.
Yeah. And I think, too, you have to give people some space to evolve as they learn more. Because not everyone's going to discover or know that much about the traditions, the history, when they're starting out, too. So it's tough. You have to give people the space, to kind of start out thinking, oh, this is just so fluffy and wonderful. But then, start to learn more about it and grow and evolve. So it's tough to kind of balance those two things. You want to come up with a better idea of what witchcraft is and properly portray that. But you don't want to be too disclusionary towards those that are still confused, are still learning.
Yeah, definitely. And it's sad because in the 50s, 60s, 70s, everyone said, oh, you're interested in witchcraft? Go find a witch. Go talk to them. And now people say, oh, you're interested in witchcraft? Go read this Llewellyn book.
Yeah.
And then they get caught in this cycle of just doing the same thing that the Llewellyn books say. And it's almost discouraged to talk to people. And in a lot of websites and forums, it's discouraged to approach a coven. They say that you're braver and stronger if you do it on your own, just by reading these books and websites. And I find a lot of people just, because of that, they stay in this dabbler phase. And they stay as a dabbler for many, many years, and never know that there's something more rigorous, more powerful, more bang for your buck out there, because it's discouraged in a lot of places. So I hope, as long as I'm holding a little bit of microphone every once in a while, that I can say, if you're curious, just talk to someone. Talk to a traditionalist, talk to a non-traditionalist, and actually engage in that. You can't just read Tumblr posts and expect to know anything. You have to go and you have to talk to people. You have to explore this world. This world is more than screens. And that's part of what I was talking about in my Which Way magazine interview, how this generation is told so much, don't talk to active flesh and blood groups like people have been doing for so long. We're taught to talk to internet forums, and it becomes an echo chamber. You don't actually get discussion with people and debate, and in short, you don't learn anything. And I hope that as maybe everyone gets jaded with the internet and technology, maybe they'll be like, I'm tired of this, I'm closing my laptop and I'm going to go talk to some real people. Yeah. I hope that happens.
Yeah, it's kind of a tough line there with technology and social media, because you're right, we do need to put the phones away and start talking and learning from each other. And that's kind of where the power, that's where the actual witchcraft lies, is away from technology.
Yes, definitely. But you're going to be controversial to the computer witches and the emoji spellcasters now.
Well, I'm not sure about that, but most people on Tumblr, the age demographic skews pretty young, so I'm not too worried about the emoji spell people, and they might be onto something about using technology, but maybe emojis isn't the best way, but maybe they're on some other kind of interesting thing. I was talking to some chaos magicians the other day, how can we use sigil work to come up with some cryptocurrency, ideas. So there's ways to incorporate technology and witchcraft, but the emoji spells might not be it, but they might be onto something else down the road.
Occultist. Exploring the bounds of the internet.
And
I think it should be explored.
I think it's interesting too on how, we need to kind of separate our actual witchcraft practices from the internet, from technology. But at the same time, it is this really powerful tool to kind of share those traditions and share those stories to get people interested in a way that hasn't existed before. And I come from a marketing background, so I'm really into web design and things like that. And I see these websites that have been around in kind of the pagan or Wiccan community forever, and they still look like they're stuck, in GeoCities. They're early 90s with some sparkles and some flashing broomstick, and it's just not the image, that really we're trying to portray. And I think it throws a lot of young people off. And so they retreat to Tumblr, and then they're only getting advice from other 16-year-olds when really, but they're not going to be interested in looking at a site that looks like it's from, the 90s at the same time. So there's that tension there. We got to use technology, but we got to use it better than we are now. And then we need to learn how to, when the time comes, turn it off and go outside of the forest.
Yeah, that's a very noble perspective, very intelligent perspective. And I've never really thought of it that way, but you're right. Yeah, we need to learn how to use these tools. Just like witches in the olden days learned how to use publishing tools and write books and go to public events and just say we're here. Not try to reach out on Tumblr and these other websites to proselytize, but just say we're here. And I hope that's what we're doing. I think we're doing that.
Yeah, and I think it is a growing community. I see it. There are a lot of people on social media, on YouTube even. There's more and more people starting these discussions. So I do think there are a lot of people in a wider perspective globally that, are leaving the religions they grew up with. And now they are, questioning, well, do I become agnostic or atheist, or should I be searching for something else? And that's when having these platforms like social media, like websites, blogging, writing books, all of that kind of stuff, that's where we need to kind of tap into that and be like, okay, well, this is an option, and you should, read a little bit, talk to someone, and consider it. So there is a lot of, I think, searching in general among the youth nowadays as they leave kind of more established religions. That's a global thing that's going on. And a lot of them aren't fully comfortable with being agnostic or atheist. So I do think part of the recurring interest in witchcraft and various different witchcraft traditions and paganism is due to the people that have left that are now, thousands of them searching for something else, but they don't know what it is yet.
Yeah, and it's quite sad, this idea that if you become disillusioned with one religion, it's almost cooler and more intelligent of you to go to atheism or agnosticism. I think a lot of people go straight to that and skip the exploration. And how do you go to the height of the beauty of human experience without trying to reach upward?
Yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because I don't have many other friends that practice witchcraft or, know many people at all in my physical world. So I always try and tell people, well, you've had these kind of momentary, experiences of, kind of the sublime energy connecting with it. Like when you, go hiking and you make it to the top and you become overwhelmed, in that moment. So imagine taking that up a notch, to 100, and then you're getting closer to what the kind of divine experiences you can have within witchcraft. So I think there's a lot of interest. It's just people are afraid, or they just don't know what it is, or there's still a lot of stigma out there. Yeah.
I was afraid to step fully into the world of the paranormal and the occult. I was terrified of it for a while. And I'm sure a lot of young people who are beginning to explore spirituality. They're afraid that they're gonna get possessed by a demon or have to sell their soul. And those Christian stigmas and guilt that is just tossed out to them as a child, they can haunt you for a long time.
Yeah.
And that's part of the problem. If they're just on their own reading books, they choose when to close the book. Instead, if you're talking to someone, that discussion keeps going. You don't just walk away from a discussion because it gets spooky. You have to hear what the person is saying. So, furthermore, that's just me ranting about how people need to talk to people instead of just reading posts and things.
Yeah. And it is interesting that, fear, it is a thing. I mean, our indoctrination just in our own kind of society, it's never going to leave you fully. So you are always going to have some type of undercurrent of, oh, maybe this is all a horrible idea. But facing those fears and getting beyond them is kind of a deeply powerful experience. And it causes you to question a lot of things. What is society? What is religion? Why do we have these fears? And even it helps you grow yourself. Like if you are doing a ritual, in the woods and you're by yourself, that is terrifying. And you're going to, on the other end of it, be a more courageous person. Just for the mere fact you're alone in the woods at night. Who does that? But it's amazing.
And you're facing your most primal fears in a lot of these situations. I mean, the idea of a magician, I mean, this isn't specifically witchcraft, but the idea of a magician sitting in a magic circle and going through all this preparation only to know that there's going to be a demon in front of you by the end of this night. It's quite terrifying. And then once you are done with that ritual, you realize that you're a stronger person. That's the whole idea of a magician, is someone who's so strong, so holy, so developed within their own mind that they can command these powerful spirits. And that's something missing a lot. People don't want to command the powerful spirits. They want to stay away from them because they're scary. That never allows you to challenge yourself. Like you said, it doesn't allow you to go through that dark forest alone and come out as a stronger person. Magic and the occult and all mystery traditions are supposed to challenge and scare you because it makes you stronger. Yeah. If we don't have anything scary happen to us in our life, it'll be meaningless. We need to grow strong as people and go through these difficult experiences. To learn, you must suffer.
Yeah, definitely. So going back to your own Alexandrian practice, so we know kind of Alexandrian witchcraft, it kind of stems from Gardnerian witchcraft, but what would you say are the main differences between those two systems?
So Gardnerian witchcraft came first into being as a thing, but to the Gardnerians, it was just witchcraft. Then 10 to 20 years later, Alexandrian witchcraft began forming, but to them it was just witchcraft. And finally they had to say, okay, what are we going to call ourselves? I guess Alexandrian, that makes sense. But you have to realize that they're two living traditions, and they've been living for 60, 70 years. So the difference is, though, I've never been in a Gardnerian circle, first off, so I can't talk about what happens within that circle in regards to Alexandrian witchcraft. But I can say that when Alex and Maxine branched off of the Gardnerians and they went their separate ways, they made some conscious decisions, and they were subtle decisions, but they were quite calculated and quite meaningful, quite purposeful. It was all on the idea of, we're taking this witch cult from long ago, lost in time, when things were, it was still dangerous for them to be out in public, but it wasn't deadly. You wouldn't be strung up by the neck, most likely. They wanted to take it out of those years of fear and persecution and control. In order to protect the coven, there had to be that control. They wanted to make it about personal liberty. So they said that you're free to come and go as you please. You're an initiate forever. You can always come back, but you're free to come and go as you please. We won't do anything to try and keep you here. And another thing is, they wanted all priesthood to be able to practice magic. They didn't just want the high priesthood to be able to practice things. They wanted everyone to go through it. So more about that personal liberty. They also made it so that you're given the second and third degree at the same time. Once you're done with your training, and you have the same power and authority, I guess. You're free to come and go as you please, and you're free to start your own coven. So it's all about just taking away that control, letting people practice freely and not to be bound by anything. And that's kind of the spirit of the whole thing, is that we want to be free. Maxine Sanders always says there are no secrets in Alexandrian witchcraft. There are only mysteries. So we're free to talk to people and answer their questions. And if they know to ask the question, they're okay to have the answer. so we're way less secretive, and that's something that Gardnerians typically don't like, because it's their way to be very preserve the sacred, and we try to preserve the mysteries.
So
but aside from that, a lot of our rituals are very similar. We're still part of the same religion, still the same cult, but just a different tradition within that.
So how do you view then the purpose of initiation within Alexandrian witchcraft, and what does it really mean to reach that third degree or the highest degree?
The purpose of initiation is basically to bring you in to the power and the current of your tradition. Mm-hmm. It does a few things, actually. It brings you into that power, and it bestows that power upon you. Unless you're initiated, you can't have that. You can't have it within you, because the initiation brings you into it. And it's like you jump into the waters of this craft, and you become submerged in it. Another thing about initiation and the elevations is to make sure you get trained. So once you're initiated, you start learning all of the secrets that they would never publish anywhere, the lore that's passed on only by word of mouth, never recorded. You go through rigorous training, you advance and you advance. And if you decide to ask for it and you have received your full training, you can ask for your elevations. And once you're elevated, it's simply a mark saying, all of my hard work, this has gotten me to this place. And it's an acknowledgement by your fellow priesthood that we recognize you as such. And once you get that, you're free to go and form your own coven if you want, or stay, or just serve that same coven. A lot of people act like once you get that third degree, that's the highest you can go. You reach the peak of the mountain, and now you're top dog in witchcraft, and now you can go to some other spirituality and go collect some other badges. But to those people, I'm guessing it was all about power in the first place. Really, the third degree is just one mystery among many. You reach it, and you learn it, and you try to embody it within yourself. But it is just one mystery among many. Those people who are trying to reach the top of the pyramid and think, I've received the third degree, now I have learned everything witchcraft has to offer, and now I have to go find something else to learn more. There are so many mysteries within the craft that it could last you lifetimes, and you still wouldn't learn them all. So really, it's an acknowledgement. It's your initiation into the craft, your penetration into the mysteries, and then your celebration of the acknowledgement of those mysteries. And it keeps going on from there. There are people who have been in this for life, many people who've been in it for life. It's not just like something you get your badge, like you get your black belt in karate and then you go on and do something else.
Yeah, so then because you come from this specific tradition, how do you feel about the general trend among modern witches to being more eclectic and just kind of picking and choosing from various, even Gardnerian or Alexandrian or whatever they want, and just kind of meshing it all together?
Well, like I said before, these people are usually very sincere, and they're doing something that does work for them. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, if you're going to build a house, and you want that house to be strong and last a lifetime, you have to put the bricks in a certain way. You have to build the beams a certain way. If you decide, I don't care about the rules, I don't care about these traditions that houses are built in, I'm just going to do it however I want, you're probably not going to have a very strong house. And I mean, the house, once you finish it, it'll be exactly how you wanted it, right? It'll be just as you envisioned it, and you got to do everything your way, and it's perfectly suitable for you, but it'll probably blow down in a storm.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's interesting. What do you feel about...
For sure, it's going to hurt some feelings with that one, but that's how I see it. People have always been trying to master systems, and the discipline that comes from mastering a system and not being able to customize it, not being able to have it McDonaldized. It's difficult and it's a challenge, but it's a challenge I think obviously it's a challenge that I think is worth having in my life.
Yeah. What do you think about the whole Wiccan Read idea, and it harm none, do what you will kind of a thing? I know I've gotten a lot of hate for basically saying I don't really believe in it. So there's a lot of tension between those two aspects, and I think when that whole idea of the Wiccan Read too, and it came in, part of it was I think people wanted Wicca to have a seat at the table among the other religions. They wanted to project this image of everything is of light and beauty and wonderful, and witches never did curses historically, which is not historically accurate. But now I think people are saying, it's almost okay if we don't have a seat at the table, and we don't necessarily need to follow this. What are your thoughts on that?
We've never had a seat at the table. We never. Witchcraft will always be for the few. Mm-hmm. Just like any mystery cult in the past. You weren't born into a mystery cult. The few select amount of people would join that mystery cult in any ancient civilization, and they would be right for it, and they would dedicate themselves to it. It's not like Christianity. It just isn't. And people can try to make Wicca about like Christianity, where Unitarian Universalists just come sit in the pews and watch us do a ritual. It'll be all love and light, and we never do anything controversial. We never get our hands dirty. Our claws never come out. We're basically the Holy Spirit in a purple robe, so to speak. And if people feel like they want to criticize you for saying you don't believe in the Wiccan Read, then they kind of have to reconcile, okay, when did that become a thing that you must believe in this? And I can answer that right here as someone who is initiated into what everyone else is getting their McDonald form of Wicca from. Oh no, there's going to be so many hate comments. But
it's okay, I get them regularly, so don't worry about it.
Okay. I can tell you right now, Read has always been a word of advice, not a commandment. Mm-hmm. The Wiccan Read is not something you follow, and it's not something you believe in. It's just a word of advice. Mm-hmm. It's like, tie your shoelaces before you go. You don't have to, and you'll probably make it there fine, but you might trip.
Yeah.
Don't harm people, but if you have to balance the amount of harm. If you harm one person to protect tons of other people, or you control one person to protect the freedom of a bunch of other people, what really is causing the most harm if you weigh it on the scales? And a lot of people, they haven't got the training. They aren't being trained in the tradition where this word of advice comes from, and they're just taking it and making it their own thing. If you haven't got that training, why are you applying this to yourself?
Right.
It's just, I think, like you said, trying to make it more like Christianity or any of the other things. Like, we have one rule, it's the Wiccan Read, and you must follow it. You cannot harm anyone. It's first off, they haven't been taught what that rule actually means, or that word of advice actually means. And they won't get taught unless they decide to go get trained. And once they go get trained, they'll learn what it actually is, and they'll be like, oh, I guess I'll stop spreading that around on the internet now, because I didn't know what it meant before.
Yeah. I think it's kind of interesting, too, that in pretty much all kind of major religious systems, you have this stark division between good and evil. And in witchcraft, what I kind of like on it is it just kind of respects that we are intelligent enough to come up with our own sense of morality, that everything is that shade of gray, and it's up to you as the practitioner to figure out where you lie on that, and there will be consequences, but you have that responsibility. You're given the honor of that responsibility to make those moral judgments yourself.
Yeah, and it seems to be kind of, people are like, if I follow the rules, nothing bad will happen. where in British witchcraft, it's like, learn lessons, learn how to be a better person, make mistakes. Mistakes are necessary and suffering is necessary. So if you do make a mistake, great. Learn from it. Love that mistake.
Yeah. I know I made plenty of mistakes. I started messing around with this stuff when I was like 13, so I knew I was doing a bunch of stupid stuff that I read online. So that's just part of the process.
Maybe you should make a video about that. I'd love to hear of some blunders.
Okay. Maybe I will. That's a good idea. So you've actually written a book too that's focused on kind of magical defense and protection, and it's really based on those English folk practices. So what was that process like of writing that book?
Well, during that year where I wrote it, I was thinking of writing a book, and I was thinking of recording what I'd been doing in my spiritual services for people in some way. And I was thinking maybe I should just write all of it down, but it's always developing, and I always have to make it better, so I don't know if I should write it down. Thought about making one on divination, still might do that. I'm sure a lot of people would love it and learn a lot from it. Mm-hmm. But during that last 6 months of that year that I wrote it, almost everyone who was coming to me for help had the same problems, either a curse or some type of dark energy following them and oppressing them. And I slowly started to become Ed and Lorraine Warren. I started going to houses and investigating and helping them, and it just, so much of it. And finally, I woke up and I was like, this is what needs to happen now. I need to write this book. This is what people need. There are so many people across the country who are going through this, and they don't live in my state, and they don't live anywhere near me, and they need this help. And people were emailing me from across the country, in other continents even, saying that they're having this terrible spiritual experience, and their life is like on the line, basically. And I basically realized, okay, no one else is writing this book. I can't find anything else about this topic for people who need the help and who need this knowledge, and people who are in the spiritual and magical realms, and they're going to need this knowledge eventually, and so they need to be prepared. So I was just like, I need to write it, and as soon as that happened, it just came out, and it was all done so fast, and it was just a completed product, and I was like, okay, it's done, I guess. And since then, so many people have bought it, and it's being sold in different states across the U.S., and orders go out to Australia and the UK and like the Netherlands and all these crazy different countries, and it's just so amazing. But it just shows that there was a reason it was written, and it's to help people, and it is helping people. So I hope it grows, and I hope people learn from it, and people are prepared and happier spiritual people in their lives because of it.
Yeah, definitely. That's great. And I mostly do tarot readings, but like it's so great to help people from all over the world too, kind of through that knowledge. And every once in a while I'll get an email like that, someone sending me, please help me with this spell work. And I don't really advertise, that I do certain spells or services for others, but now I can at least recommend them your book, which will be good. So that's really great.
Hands.
What was that?
So people can take it into their own hands. They're always like, I have no idea what to do. I need someone to help me. And then it's very empowering for them to take it into their own hands and make it their own responsibility to help themselves. And that's more powerful magic, in my opinion, too, for them to be able to take charge of their life and say, no, I'm not having this. I'm doing my own thing in this life, and I have control. Yeah. That's a very beautiful thing. And as spiritual people, we can do our readings, and we can help these people to obtain that self-control and take control of their lives and see things that they didn't see before. So it's a noble goal. It's something humanity has always had, and we're just the keepers of that flame of helping people with spirituality and being that shining beacon, saying, we're here, we can do something for you.
Yeah, and it's so impressive to me that, you're pretty young and you already got a book out there, and I'm working on writing my own book at the moment. So you're just giving me more motivation to like keep writing and get it done. So that's good.
Writing. Yeah. You have to force yourself, and it's not very fun, but you can do it. The important thing is to be able to see your progress, because even if that means printing it out and seeing the little stack of paper grow, you have to psychologically see your progress for it to, oh no, I'm going out. You have to psychologically see your progress for it to feel like you're getting somewhere. That's the most important thing for me writing. So if you're writing a book, I encourage it. It's just very hard, but it's rewarding. It's so rewarding to be able to see your words on a page and know that someone else has them. And it's like a form of magic. Like there's that quote that art and writing and music are the truest forms of magic, because it brings one set of thoughts and transmits them to someone else's mind, and it's like telepathic communication almost.
Yeah,
it's a wonderful thing.
That's interesting. And I kind of have a random question, because I know you're in New Orleans at the moment.
Yes.
And that is probably my favorite city. I'm based in Chicago, but I go down to New Orleans every chance I can, because I think it is such a magical city. There is so much amazing energy there. So I just wanted to know your thoughts on, as a magical practitioner, as a witch, your relationship with the city of New Orleans.
It's first off magical for me because of the energies, like you said, and the history. Just like as I sit here right now, the warm sun is shining through. It's not humid in here, but if I were to step outside, there'd be water everywhere, all through the air. There's always people bustling around, happy, celebrating, and it's just such a unique place. And it's like one of the oldest cities in the U.S. And for its entire history, there have been people celebrating here, and there has also been tragedy here. There's been so much joy, so much tragedy, so much heartbreak, so much destruction, but also just so much celebration and acceptance of people. And this is like, people are so accepting of magic here because it's been such a part of the place for so long. Last year at Hex Fest, we did this riverboat ritual. What's the big river? I don't live here, so I don't know all the facts. What's the big river?
The Mississippi. Yeah.
Of course, the Mississippi. We were doing a riverboat thing, a riverboat tour at sunset. Everyone was drinking wine and celebrating and cocktails, and the sun was setting, and it was so warm everywhere, but I mean, everyone was sweating all over the place and laughing because we were drinking, and it was just like such a New Orleans celebration experience. And we were going down what everyone was comparing on the boat to the Nile of Egypt. This is the Nile of Louisiana and the southern states, and it's just like that. It's like an ordinary river becomes the Nile, and the tattered bricks become ancient pieces of history.
Yeah.
And just walking through, you just get overwhelmed because there's so many beautiful, unique things that have just been around for so long. It's an amazing place to be, like you said, and you try to visit it as much as you can.
So my last question for you would be, do you have any books you would recommend for those starting to learn about witchcraft, or any specific advice you would like to send out there?
Yeah, definitely. When I first started, I mean, you can choose any book, and most of them will be bad. Every once in a while, you'll get a good one. Most people only have the bad ones on their bookshelf, unfortunately. If you're lucky, you'll just by chance find one of the really informative, historical, and knowledgeable ones. One book that I wish I found first is Drawing Down the Moon by Margot Adler, because she goes through like a timeline. I mean, I think she wrote it for a class, or a class was designed after the book, so it is really educational, and it was taught in universities, so it's a really good resource book. But she follows a timeline of the entire witchcraft and pagan revival movement. And she goes into each and every tradition, tells you about it, its history, and what it's like to be in there, what are the hallmarks of it, and the unique practices of it. And then she goes all the way through witchcraft, and then she starts at paganism, and she follows paganism. And so for the new people will say, oh, if you're interested in Wicca, go out and buy Scott Cunningham's Wicca for the Solitary Practitioner. No, please don't. read of all the different traditions and where they came from, so you can get a grasp on where you're going. And once you read that book, you can see, okay, I'm really interested in these three. And then you can go read books based on those three practices. Also, if you're interested in what I'm talking about, British traditional witchcraft, particularly Alexandrian, I'd recommend Firechild by Maxine Sanders. She's the co-founder of the Alexandrian tradition, and she just basically goes through and she tells of all her magical experiences in her life since she became a witch. So if you're interested in this, you can read that book and see what it's like to live in this tradition, live as a witch. And it's such an amazing book just because she's so full of wisdom and so many amazing experiences.
So thank you so much for having this talk with me. We discussed a lot of really interesting topics, and I know I'm going to get a lot of neat comments and questions in the comment section down below. So thank you so much for sharing too about Alexandrian witchcraft, because I personally don't know that much about it yet. So it's been a really good learning experience for me, and I hope it helps out those that might watch this channel and are curious about it.
I hope so too. Thank you for having me on.